on the rooftop of Soho House in the meatpacking district. The air was mixed with the burnt aroma of Cuban cigars, the cloying sweetness of expensive champagne, and a scent of rotting decadence belonging to excess hormones. This was the last single night before my wedding. Only, the main character wasn't me. Vivian Chin, wearing a sharply tailored white Chanel tweed suit, sat primly on the dark velvet sofa in the corner like an outsider who had stumbled into a frat party, while in the center of the dance floor, my fiancé, the nominal heir to the Sterling family Nathaniel Sterling, was enjoying his last bit of freedom without a single scruple. "Come on, Nate, one more time, don't be such a pussy." Amidst the jeering of a bunch of Wall Street trust fund babies and frat bro cronies, that woman wearing a pitiful amount of fabric Bella Vance was kneeling on Nathaniel's lap with a bright red cherry in her mouth. She was wearing a piece of sequined fabric that couldn't even be called a dress, her tan skin gleaming with oil under the dim lights, leaning toward Nathaniel's lips with a gaze full of provocation. That was Nathaniel's ex-girlfriend, a small-time influencer trying to scrape a spot on the fringes of Manhattan's high society by relying on Instagram filters, buying bot followers, and posting photos that skirted the edge of platform moderation. Amidst a burst of ear-splitting whistles and cheers, Nathaniel suddenly jerked his head forward and bit onto that cherry. His action was not gentlemanly. It even carried a savage vulgarity, his tongue licking across Bella's lips in an extremely suggestive manner, leaving behind a wet, slobbery trail. Bella let out a giggle, a laugh like sharp fingernails scratching across a blackboard. Then, her defiant gaze pierced through the crowd, striking me directly. Her eyes were filled with a crude and blatant display of defiance. "See, even if you marry him tomorrow, tonight hell taste me." If this were filming Gossip Girl, the narrator would probably say right now in that languid and cutting tone, "It looks like our Queen V has run into a spot of trouble. In this city where there are only interests and no love, aside from the black card in your hand, who else can give you a sense of security?" But I just expressionlessly swirled the soda water in my hand, not even raising an eyebrow. As the youngest executive director at Chin Capital, I've long been accustomed to viewing everything through the lens of a balance sheet, including that fiancé who is currently acting like a male dog in heat. The Sterling family is typical old money, possessing a century of prestige and commercial real estate all over the U.S. That surname itself is a passport in this country, but that is in the past tense. Their investment strategies in recent years have been utterly stupid, and their cash flow has dried up to the point where they need to sell off their ancestral estate in the Hamptons. And as for the Chin family, we are new money rising from Silicon Valley. We have staggering cash flow, but the one thing we lack is an entry ticket into Manhattan's top-tier social circles, or rather, the inner circle dominated by wasps. This is essentially an MA deal, just wearing the skin of a wedding. I am that capital injection, and Nathaniel is that shell resource on the verge of delisting. "Vivian, baby, you don't look too good." Finally, Nathaniel pushed away the woman who was practically glued to him and stumbled over, glass in hand. His tie hung loosely around his neck, his shirt collar unbuttoned to reveal skin flushed red from alcohol, his face wearing that nauseating arrogance, as if he were bestowing a favor. "Don't be such a buzzkill. The wedding is tomorrow. Bella is just here as an old friend to give me her blessings." He walked up to me, looking down at me condescendingly, his tone flippant. "You know, American bachelor parties are always supposed to be a little wild." I quietly leaned back a little, dodging the heavy reek of alcohol he spewed out. "Wild and sleazy are two different things, Nathaniel. If you need me to remind you, everyone here right now has signed an NDA, but that doesn't mean you can throw the Sterling family's face on the ground and stomp on it." Nathaniel's smile stiffened for a moment, followed immediately by a glint of sinister viciousness born of humiliation in his eyes. He suddenly leaned down, propping one hand on the back of the sofa behind me, trapping me in his shadow. "Face," he lowered his voice, whispering in my ear with a vicious tone that only the two of us could hear. "Vivian, get this straight. It was your nouveau riche parents who begged us for this marriage alliance. It is an honor for your Chin family's filthy money to be laundered into the Sterling Family Trust Fund. You are nothing but a walking ATM, so don't put on that high and mighty act of a chaste saint." It's nauseating to watch. The surrounding noise seemed to have been hit with the mute button at this moment. My fingers holding the phone tightened slightly, my knuckles turning white from the force. These were his true thoughts. In the eyes of this arrogant white trust fund baby, no matter how high my degree is, how perfect my resume is, or even that my family assets have a few more zeros than his, I am just a tool for a cash injection, an outsider who can never truly fit into their rotting circle. I raised my head, looking straight into his muddy blue eyes. "Nathaniel," I began, my voice as calm as if I were conducting a business negotiation. The Sterling Group's current stock price is entirely propped up by this wedding announcement. If I walk out right now and announce to the TMZ reporters guarding the door that the wedding is off, the moment Nasdaq opens tomorrow, you'll receive a margin call from the bank. By then, you won't even have the money to buy Miss Bella here cherries. Nathaniel's expression changed abruptly. It was the hideous look of someone having a sore spot poked. You dare threaten me, you goddamn. He abruptly raised his hand, seemingly wanting to give me a slap, attempting to use this most primitive violence to establish his laughable dominance in this relationship, but I was faster than him. The instant his hand fell, I grabbed the glass of vodka filled with ice from the table, flipped my wrist, and splashed it precisely and ruthlessly onto his face. Splash! The freezing liquid mixed with ice cubes smacked against his face, flowing down his expensive bespoke suit. The whole place went dead silent. Even the DJ tactfully cut the music. Everyone's gaze focused over here. Bella covered her mouth, letting out an exaggerated gasp. Nathaniel shivered from the sudden cold. He wiped the alcohol off his face in disbelief, glaring at me like a drowned rat. Sober now, I stood up, gracefully smoothing out my unwrinkled Chanel jacket, and casually pulled out a tissue to wipe the wine stain from the back of my hand. My tone was calm and indifferent, carrying the oppressive air of someone long in power, as if I weren't facing my fiancé, but firing and underperforming in turn. This drink is to your stupidity, and the Sterling family's debt that is about to come due. I didn't spare him another glance, grabbed my clutch, and turned to walk towards the door. My high heels clicked against the marble floor, crisp and rhythmic, and every step felt like I was stepping on Nathaniel's fragile ego. Behind me came Nathaniel's furious roar and the loud crash of a shattering glass. Vivian, you stop right there. You think you can come back if you leave. Tomorrow you'll have to be on your knees begging me to marry you like a good girl, or else your Chin family will never dream of getting into that circle in this lifetime. I didn't look back, the corners of my mouth curling into a mocking sneer. He seems to have forgotten, or perhaps he never saw clearly, that I have never been the kind of bitter wealthy wife who just swallows insults in silence. In this game of capital and power, it's too early to say who will be kneeling and begging whom. Pushing open the heavy glass doors of Soho House, the Manhattan autumn rain hit me in the face without warning. The rain was heavy, and the neon lights blurred into bizarre patches of color on the wet ground. The cold New York wind mixed with rain poured down my collar, instantly washing away the lingering heat from inside and making my mind clearer than ever before. I stood under the eaves, watching the yellow cabs hurrying past in the curtain of rain. I didn't call the family driver because I didn't want my mother to find out about the farce just now immediately. If she knew, I didn't even have to think to guess what she'd say. Vivian, this is marriage. This is the price. Men always like to play around. As long as he shows up on time at the wedding tomorrow, as long as that ring is on your hand, you have to endure everything else. For the family. Endure. I sneered involuntarily. In business logic, if the risk of an investment far outweighs the return, and the partner has also shown extreme uncontrollability and malice, then the wisest move isn't to increase the investment, but to cut losses, or even short it. Just then, a pitch-black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided silently through the curtain of rain and stopped precisely in front of me. The car didn't bear any conspicuous license plates. Its body lines were sleek yet menacing, like a giant beast lurking in the dark night. At this intersection full of Ubers and yellow cabs, its appearance seemed out of place, yet it carried an air of absolute dominance. The rear window slowly rolled down halfway. The lights were off inside the car, but by the dim yellow light from the roadside, I clearly saw his profile. His features were deep and chiseled as if carved by a knife, with a high-nose bridge and thin lips pressed tight. Light and shadow cut a dividing line across his face. One half was suffocatingly handsome, the other unfathomably gloomy. Silas Sterling. My breathing stopped for half a beat in that instant. That was Nathaniel's half-brother, the illegitimate son considered a disgrace by the Sterling family because of his mother's lowly status, reportedly just an unknown dancer in Las Vegas. He had been exiled to the London branch 10 years ago, but instead of rotting away in the gutter as the family had expected, he had become a shark. He established his own hedge fund in London, famous on Wall Street for his cold-blooded, precise, and ruthless short-selling tactics. Rumor has it that any company Silas Sterling sets his sights on ends up devoured whole, without even a scrap of bone left. Get in the car. His voice cut through the rain, deep, with an undeniable magnetism, like the low hum of a cello in the dead of night. I hesitated for a tenth of a second. Reason told me that getting into his car at this moment was no different from jumping out of a fire pit into a wolf's den, but looking at that slowly opening car door, And everything inside Soho House behind the curtain of rain that made me sick. I lifted my skirt, bent down, and got in. The moment the car door closed, the noisy world was completely shut out. It was warm and dry inside the car, permeating with a faint woody cedar scent that was the smell of some high-end aftershave mixed with leather seats. Cold and restrained, Silas didn't look at me, his long legs crossed, his gaze resting on the tablet glowing dimly in his hand. The screen was filled with dense candlestick charts and constantly jumping green numbers. Sterling Group's stock price trend. His slender fingers lightly swiped across the screen. Then he took a neatly folded white hot towel and an ice pack from the storage compartment next to him and handed them over. Put this on. His tone was as flat as if he were talking about the weather, yet he pinpointed my embarrassment with precision. Your left cheek is red. Although he didn't hit you, you're probably pretty pissed off. Adrenaline causes capillaries to dilate. I froze for a moment, then took the ice pack. That bone-piercing chill against my burning cheek made me let out a soft moan. Why are you here? I asked, my voice still hoarse from the argument just now. In waiting for a chance. Silas finally turned his head, those gray-blue eyes like frigid pools looking straight at me for the first time, devoid of any warmth yet deep enough to suck away a person's soul. Or rather, in waiting for you, Vivian. He picked up a black folder from beside him and threw it onto my lap. What is this? I frowned. Sterling Group's real financial statements for the last 2 quarters. The kind that hasn't been cooked, Silas said flatly. Plus the transfer records of Nathaniel embezzling company funds to buy Bella an Oceanview villa in Miami. And the evidence that to plug the hole, he secretly pledged your share of future earnings from the family trust. My heart clenched violently, and I quickly flipped open the document. Every number on it was shocking. Nathaniel isn't just an idiot, he's a criminal. If I marry him, these debt black holes will instantly swallow the first injection of funds from Chin Capital. At tomorrow's wedding, if you attend as planned, these toxic assets will be deeply bound to you and Chin Capital. If you back out now, the $50 million bridge loan the Chin family put in up front will go down the drain, and you'll become a laughingstock in the social circle. Silas looked at me like he was looking at prey caught in a trap, but he didn't close the net. Instead, he handed the key to the cage to me. I looked at him too, and my instincts as a businessman let me quickly suppress all my emotions. At a time like this, anger is the most useless thing. So, your proposal is... I closed the file, my fingertips lightly tapping the cover. Cooperation. The corner of Silas' mouth hooked into an extremely faint arc, making him look even more dangerous. Turn tomorrow's wedding into a funeral, ruin his reputation, make Sterling's stock price crash. I've already prepared the short-selling firms, just waiting for the moment the scandal breaks. I'll seize the opportunity to launch a takeover in the board and purge the management. This is what's called not just stopping losses, but making a profit. Then what do I get? I looked straight into his eyes. Silas, you know what the Chin family wants. The Chin family's capital will be fully secured, plus 20 of the profits from this shorting. After Sterling Group restructures, it'll give the Chin family 30 of the preferred shares. Silas paused, leaning forward slightly. That intense masculinity and sense of aggression instantly enveloped me, leaving me nowhere to escape. His voice became low and seductive, like the serpent in the Garden of Eden. And, a groom who is more obedient than Nathaniel, more capable, and has only you as his woman. What the Chin family needs isn't that idiot Nathaniel, but the Sterling surname, and the person who can control that surname. I can give you these. My pupils constricted slightly. Is he proposing to me? No, this isn't a proposal. This is a transaction. This is a top-level asset restructuring. I looked at this man who was seen as a disgrace by the family, yet had secretly amassed enough power to destroy everything, compared to that Nathaniel, who only sought validation from women. The Silas before me was undoubtedly a sharp blade, and I, right now, need this blade. 30 isn't enough. I stared at him, speaking slowly. I want half the shares of the private equity fund under your personal name. Silas raised his eyebrows, seemingly surprised by my exorbitant demand, but the smile in his eyes only deepened. Vivian, you really are a natural-born capitalist. Takes one to know one. Deal. He held out his hand. I looked at that hand, knuckles well-defined, long and powerful. I took a deep breath, reached out, and took hold of it. His palm was dry and warm, not cold like the rumors claimed. Instead, it held a steady strength that instantly wrapped around my icy fingers. Pleasure working with you, Vivian. The rain outside was still falling, but I knew this long rainy night was finally coming to an end, and before dawn arrived, we would personally unleash a storm strong enough to drown all of Manhattan. If Nathaniel is hopelessly stupid, then Bella is unabashedly greedy. This greed isn't impossible to understand. In materialistic New York, every girl looking to climb the social ladder has that same gleam in her eyes, but her mistake was treating greed as her only bargaining chip. The night before the wedding, I didn't go home, but went straight to Silas' apartment at 432 Park Avenue. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the flowing lights of the whole city, I took out my phone and did a very simple thing. I opened Instagram and selected a photo from my album that I had just taken. In the photo is a slender, fair hand, wearing a massive pink diamond ring on the ring finger. That pink diamond is a full 10 carats, with perfect clarity and an extremely rare radiant cut, refracting dazzling brilliance under the warm yellow light. That was what Silas stuffed into my hand in the car just now. Supposedly, it's the sister stone to the pink star, the grand finale lot at Sotheby's Geneva auction last week, with a transaction price hitting 8 figures. I added a caption to this photo, simple and cutting. Some people only deserve to eat the rotten cherries left in other people's mouths, while some people are born owning the whole world. Good night, NYC. Then, I clicked the post option and blocked everyone in the privacy settings except for one person, Bella Vance. This is bait tailored specifically for her. Sent successfully. Looking at that green check mark, I turned around. Silas was sitting at the bar, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand, watching me with great interest. "Are you sure this will work?" he asked. "Bella is greedy, but she isn't stupid. She's currently clinging to that Miami real estate tycoon, and her life isn't bad at all. It's precisely because her life isn't bad right now that she's even more unwilling to accept it." I walked over and sat down across from him, grabbing his wine glass and taking a sip. For a woman like Bella, seeing her ex marry a woman richer than her, prettier than her, and possessing a pink diamond she could never hope to reach in this lifetime, is worse than killing her. Jealousy is a poison more addictive than heroin. Silas smiled, with a hint of appreciation in that smile. "So, the next step is to make her believe she holds a trump card." I nodded. Just then, the spare phone ID placed on the table vibrated. That was a message from the informant ID planted by Bella's side her assistant. "She's gone crazy. She just saw your story and smashed everything in the dressing room. Now she's tearing the place apart looking for that fake pregnancy report from before, muttering that if she had a kid too, she could get into the Sterling family. Also, she just booked a helicopter to the Hamptons for tomorrow morning." I glanced at the screen and slid the phone over to Silas. "Look, the fish took the bait." Silas glanced at it, his gaze turning dark. "Actually, that pregnancy report is fake," he said indifferently, as if speaking of a trivial matter. "I checked her medical records. Bella had her tubes tied 3 years ago when she went for liposuction to maintain her figure. The so-called pregnancy is just her usual trick to force Nathaniel or that real estate tycoon's hand." I looked at him in surprise. "You knew." "Know thy enemy," Silas shrugged, "but at my instruction. The private doctor who helped her forge the report told her that it was flawless, and that not even the top labs could detect it. Furthermore, I had someone leak to her that the Sterling family patriarch's health is failing and he urgently needs an eldest grandson to bring good luck. So whoever gives birth to the eldest grandson will get a huge chunk of the inheritance." I drew a sharp breath. This move was too ruthless. It didn't just give Bella false hope, it pushed her to the point of no return. For a woman attempting to rely on her womb to climb the social ladder, this was her last and most insane desperate gamble. "What about Nathaniel?" I asked. "He's still living in a drunken stupor." Silas curled his lips mockingly. "He thinks that as long as he marries you tomorrow and gets the capital injection from the Chen family, he can continue living his carefree life. He didn't even think to check tomorrow's wedding schedule." "Good." I stood up and smoothed out my skirt. "Then, the stage for tomorrow is set." Silas set down his glass and walked over to me. His gaze landed on the pink diamond on my ring finger, and his look suddenly softened. "Vivian," he called my name softly, "this ring isn't a prop, it's yours." I froze for a moment, then looked up at him. "I know." I tried to keep my voice calm. "It's a good faith deposit for our cooperation. I'll keep it safe." Silas didn't argue. He just gave me a deep look, then opened the apartment door for me. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." The weather in the Hamptons the next day didn't cooperate. The sunny skies in the forecast didn't show up. Dark clouds loomed over the ocean, and gray waves crashed against the reefs with a dull roar. But that didn't dampen the bustle at the Sterling family's seaside estate one bit. As the premier social event on the East Coast, this wedding had drawn almost all of New York's elite, from Wall Street sharks to Hollywood stars, from Prada-wearing devils to senators running for governor. Hundreds of luxury cars had gridlocked the private road outside the estate. A huge white tent was erected on the lawn, and tens of thousands of Ecuadorian white roses, flown in from abroad, decorated the scene like a dreamlike wonderland. But I knew that beneath these white roses lay explosives about to detonate. I was wearing that custom Vera Wang Main wedding gown, the long train spread out on the red carpet. As I walked toward the altar holding my father's arm, I could feel countless gazes from all around. There was envy, jealousy, and also the mockery of those waiting to see a good show. Nathaniel stood before the priest, wearing a bespoke black Tom Ford suit, his hair combed to perfection. After a night of being hung over, his face was a bit pale, but the moment he saw me appear, he still wore that triumphant, fake smile. I calmly walked over to his side. Vivian, you were too impulsive last night. Before the priest started reading the vows, he turned his head, lowered his voice, and said in a volume only the two of us could hear, but I don't blame you. Women, you know, always have a bit of a temper. As long as you behave yourself from now on, no matter how I play around outside, the position of Mrs. Sterling will always be yours. After all, besides me, no one would want a shrew. I smiled at him, my eyes showing not a ripple of emotion, as if I were looking at a dead man already in the ground. Nathaniel, you'll soon know what true impulse is. The priest cleared his throat and began reciting that same old prayer, whether for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, in joy or in sorrow. Finally, that critical moment had arrived. Everyone here, does anyone object to this marriage? If so, please speak now, or forever hold your peace. The priest had just finished speaking when a huge roaring sound suddenly came from above the manor. The wind picked up instantly, messing up the guests' hair and hats. Everyone looked up in surprise, only to see a helicopter painted bright pink circling low, almost grazing the top of the tent. Immediately, the helicopter made a forced landing on the helipad at the other end of the lawn. The cabin door opened, and a woman wearing an exaggerated wedding dress studded with cheap rhinestones jumped down. It was Bella. She brandished that pregnancy checkup report in her hand, like a goddess of vengeance, yet also like a madwoman. Stumbling in her high heels, she charged into the venue, rushing straight for the high stage. Nate, you can't marry her. I have proof. I'm pregnant with your child. It's the Sterling family's eldest grandson. Her scream was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears through the venue's top-tier sound system. The whole audience went into an uproar. The originally elegant guests instantly exploded into an uproar. The flashes in the media area went crazy, and the sound of shutters merged into a continuous blur, practically trying to etch this scene into history. Nathaniel's face instantly turned pale. He stared wide-eyed at Bella rushing towards him, as if he had seen a ghost. Bella, are you crazy? How did you get here? Security. Where is the damn security? You're the one who made me come. Bella rushed to the foot of the stage but was blocked by two groomsmen who reacted in time. She screamed at the top of her lungs. You said that as long as I had a baby, you would kick this barren old hag out. You said you only loved me. Nate, look at this report. This is our son. I took a step back at just the right moment, clutching my chest, putting on an act of being shocked, hurt, and teetering on the verge of collapse while still trying to maintain my dignity. Off stage, my father's face was livid. He looked like he was ready to rush up and beat someone up at any second. But this isn't the climax yet. Just as the scene spiraled out of control and Nathaniel tried to rush down to snatch that report, everyone's phones at the venue, including the projection equipment connected to the giant LED screen behind the stage, simultaneously chimed with a crisp notification sound. Ding! That was the sound of AirDrop receiving a file. At this moment, it felt like an invisible hand had pressed a switch. Hundreds of phones lit up at the same time, and a file named Sterling Real Assets was forcibly pushed to every device with Bluetooth on. And on that huge LED screen that was originally playing our beautiful wedding photos, the image suddenly flashed and turned into a shaky, high-definition video. The background of the video is a luxury yacht in Miami. Nathaniel is shirtless, holding champagne, dancing wildly with a group of models wearing only bikinis. He's obviously wasted, spouting off to the camera. That Vivian Chin. Haha, don't be ridiculous. She's just a dumb fuck paying the bills. Once I get my hands on her family's trust fund and plug the company's holes, I'm kicking their whole family back to Asia. Do those yellow monkeys really think they're fit to join our Sterling family? A deathly silence filled the venue, followed immediately by an explosion of gasps. At the same time, a clear recording blasted through the speakers. It was a conversation between Bella and Nathaniel in bed, accompanied by suggestive panting. Honey, who does that bastard Silas think he is? Once the old man dies, I'll kick him out of the company and make him beg on the streets of Wall Street. Everything the Sterlings own will be ours. This wasn't just infidelity, it was racism. A conspiracy of family infighting, and downright fraud against a partner, Nathaniel's mother. Sitting in the front row, that noble woman who usually looked down her nose at everyone and prided herself on her aristocratic blood, rolled her eyes back and passed out cold after hearing this. Nathaniel froze in place, trembling all over as he stared at himself on the big screen. It was over. Everything was over. And I, standing in the center of the chaos, looked through the crowd toward the perimeter of the manor. There, the door of a black car opened. Silas Sterling was wearing a well-tailored dark gray three-piece suit, his tie knotted meticulously. Accompanied by his legal team and several burly bodyguards in dark suits and sunglasses, he stepped over the mess on the ground, walking up onto the stage step by step. His steps were steady, his expression cold and stern, looking like a monarch coming to clean up the aftermath, yet also like a grim reaper coming to harvest souls. He walked onto the stage and took the microphone directly from the dumbfounded priest's hands. His voice was cold, cutting through the noise of the entire venue over the speakers, silencing everyone. "I'm sorry to have let everyone see such a disgraceful scene." Silas' gaze swept across the room, finally landing on the ashen-faced Nathaniel. Given Mr. Nathaniel Sterling's severe moral corruption, alleged embezzlement, and major securities fraud, the Sterling Group Board has just held an emergency meeting and passed a resolution to formally strip him of all positions and to cooperate immediately with the SEC investigation. With that, he turned to face me, under the gaze of hundreds of eyes and countless lenses. Silas Sterling, the man known as the cold-blooded shark of Wall Street, walked up to me and knelt down on one knee. He wasn't doing it to propose, but instead reached out his hand and, extremely gently, straightened the hem of my dress that had been messed up when Bella bumped into me just now. Then he stood up, pulling me into his arms with the stance of an absolute protector, blocking out all the prying and malicious gazes. He faced the cameras and announced his final verdict. "From today on, the Sterling Group will be under my full control. As for the partnership between the Chan and Sterling families, it will be continued by Miss Vivian and myself. However, the nature of the partnership has changed." He lowered his head and looked at me, his eyes hiding a deep affection and slyness that only I could understand, reflecting the glimmer of light following the storm in the Hamptons. "Vivian, compared to that piece of trash, would you consider switching to a more qualified, more loyal partner?" I looked at him, and in that instant, I knew that we had won this high-stakes gamble. That wedding in the Hamptons ultimately concluded in a manner that was extremely dramatic yet fitting of the law of the jungle on Wall Street, dubbed by the New York Times as the Hamptons coup. But the real reckoning was only just beginning. The Sterling Group's stock price triggered a circuit breaker within half an hour of the airdrop scandal breaking. Investors who still held a shred of hope for this old money family completely lost faith after seeing the video of Nathaniel filled with racism and hard evidence of embezzlement. A massive sell-off swept through the Nasdaq like a tsunami. And in the eye of the storm, the offshore hedge fund under Silas' name was frantically harvesting profits from the short positions it had long laid in ambush. He was shorting his own family's business, or more accurately, he was clearing out the rotting flesh. 3 days later, inside a private ward at New York Presbyterian Hospital, Bella was huddled on the hospital bed, her face whiter than the sheets. Just 2 hours ago, her pregnancy lie had been completely exposed. It wasn't a miscarriage, she had never been pregnant at all. The private doctor who helped her forge the report flew to the Bahamas overnight after receiving a sum of hush money from Silas, sending the real medical records to all major media outlets before he left. I just love Nate too much." Bella was still trying to explain herself, but facing the 2 FBI agents standing by the bed, her voice was shaking like a leaf. "I didn't mean to blackmail him. Really, Ms. Vance, this isn't just about blackmail," one of the agents said coldly. "You are suspected of assisting Nathaniel Sterling in securities fraud and money laundering. The funds transferred to the Miami property under your name are not from a clean source." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, at the Manhattan Federal Detention Center, Nathaniel, wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, looked through the bulletproof glass at Silas, who had come to visit. "You set me up," Nathaniel roared while clutching the receiver, his eyes bloodshot. "You're the one who sent that bitch to the wedding. You're the one who released the video. Silas, you bastard, you ruined the Sterling family." Silas sat in the chair, looking at him with an indifferent expression, as if watching a monkey raging helplessly in a cage. "Correction. It was you who ruined the Sterling family. I'm just helping you make a graceful exit." Silas' voice was calm. "As for that video, Nathaniel, if you hadn't filmed it, I wouldn't have had the chance to release it. If you hadn't been stupid enough to humiliate Vivian in public, I wouldn't have acted so soon." "Vivian." Nathaniel seemed to grasp at the last straw. "I want to see Vivian. She loves me. She was just tricked by you. I want to see her. Silas stood up, looking down at him, the corner of his mouth curling into a cruel arc. She's not available. She's with me right now, signing the final agreement for the privatization of the Sterling Group. Nathaniel, save your breath. In federal prison. Your loud voice won't do you any good. After saying that, he hung up the phone, turned around and left, without looking back even once at that once high and mighty younger brother. That night, Manhattan, south of Central Park, Silas' penthouse, outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Central Park looked like a huge piece of black jade, inlaid within the dazzling city lights. I sat on the leather sofa, holding a freshly printed document. That was the equity distribution agreement following the Sterling Group's privatization. This is yours. Silas walked over holding 2 glasses of red wine, handed one to me, then pointed at a clause in the document. I glanced at it, my pupils constricting slightly. What was written on it wasn't the 30 preferred stock we agreed on before, but half the management shares of that legendary hedge fund under Silas' personal name Abyss Capital. This value far exceeds the original agreement. You could even call it an astronomical figure. Why? I put down my glass and looked up at him. Silas, there are no philanthropists in the business world. You've already won. Nathaniel is in prison, and you've got control of the Sterling Group. You don't need to use this way to please me anymore. Silas put down his glass and didn't answer directly. He walked up to me, took off that oppressive suit jacket and tossed it aside casually, wearing only a white shirt with 2 buttons undone, sleeves rolled up, revealing the muscular lines of his forearms. He crouched down, his gaze level with mine. In that moment, I couldn't see the ruthless Wall Street shark in his eyes, only a man who had let down all his defenses. Vivian, do you really think I only set my sights on you yesterday? He took a somewhat yellowed photo out of his shirt pocket and handed it to me. I took it, puzzled. The photo was Lower's, even a bit blurry, and the background was Columbia University's iconic Butler Library. In the photo, a young girl was sleeping slumped over a thick pile of financial reports and economic models. Sunlight streamed through the tall arched windows onto her long hair, giving her profile a golden lining. That was me in my junior year. Back then, I was working as a part-time administrator at the library. Silas' voice was soft, carrying a hint of nostalgia. You were the most famous heiress in the whole school, and everyone said you only came to study to get a diploma and find a husband. But every day, I saw you arrive the earliest and leave the latest, just to figure out those damn valuation models. You could survive on bread for 2 weeks straight. I froze. That was when I was pushing myself the hardest. I wanted to prove to my family that I wasn't just a tool for a marriage alliance. I wanted to prove I could make it on Wall Street on my own merits, but I thought no one would care. That time in the library, you fell asleep, and the air conditioning was freezing. I secretly draped my coat over you, then took it back before you woke up. Silas looked at me, deep affection swirling in his eyes. I thought, if one day I had the power, I would never let you work so hard. I want to give you a world where you don't have to struggle so desperately just to prove something. For these past 10 years, I've clawed my way up in London and battled those sharks on Wall Street who eat people alive, just to earn the right to stand before you and snatch you away from that piece of trash. He reached out and gently held my hand, the pads of his fingers caressing the pink diamond ring on my ring finger. Vivian, in this acquisition, the Sterling Group is just a side trophy. My only goal is you. I looked at this man. In Manhattan, on Wall Street, everyone tells me that love is the biggest Ponzi scheme, and only equity, trusts, and prenups are real. But at this moment, looking at my reflection in his eyes, listening to this confession spanning 10 years, that block of solid ice in my heart seems to have really cracked open. Maybe this time, I really made a deal that's guaranteed to profit without any loss. Silas, I held his hand back, interlacing our fingers, and revealed the first truly heartfelt, relaxed smile I'd had all day, or even in the past few years. Then you'd better be prepared. My management fees are very expensive. Silas smiled, a smile so brilliant that the night scenery outside the window paled in comparison. He lowered his head and reverently kissed my fingertips, like a believer kissing a deity. It is my honor, Mrs. Sterling.